Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israeli strikes on the Gaza Strip killed at least 38 Palestinians and injured another 190 over the past 24 hours. An estimated 500,000 Palestinians remain in Gaza City, despite an advance by Israeli tanks, paratroopers, explosive-laden robots, and remote-controlled vehicles. Among the latest victims is a 5-year-old Palestinian girl named Noor, whose parents frantically searched the rubble of their Gaza City home Monday after it was flattened by an Israeli strike.
Bring me Noor, bring me Noor. In 7 years, I've only had her. I do not have any children except her. Noor is under the rubble. Where is Noor?
Noor was found under the debris, but later died in an ambulance. Her family had fled their home in the Zaytun neighborhood after it was destroyed in a previous strike. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry is warning patients face certain death at hospitals that have nearly exhausted fuel supplies needed for generators that power life-saving medical equipment. France has formally recognized a Palestinian state for the first time. President Emmanuel Macron declared France's recognition Monday as the United Nations convened its General Assembly for the 80th consecutive year.
Le temps est venu.
The time has come.
C'est pourquoi.
This is why.
Fidèle à l'engagement historique.
Loyalty to my country's historic commitment to the Middle East,
pour la paix entre le
for
peuple
peace among
israélien
Israeli people
et le peuple palestinien.
and the Palestinian people.
Je déclare que la France
I declare that
reconnaît
France recognizes today
l'État de
the state
Palestine.
of Palestine.
Andorra, Belgium, Luxembourg, Malta, and Monaco also declared their recognition of a Palestinian state Monday. With France's recognition, the United States is now the only member of the UN Security Council not to recognize Palestine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the declarations as a, quote, huge reward to terrorism, unquote, and said a Palestinian state, quote, will not happen. In Italy, tens of thousands of people took to the streets of dozens of cities Monday as Italian labor unions led a nationwide 24-hour general strike to demand an end to Israel's assault on Gaza. In Rome, tens of thousands joined a march that blocked a major highway. There were similar scenes in Bologna, where student protesters occupied university lecture halls. In Venice, police fired water cannons to disperse protesters, while dock workers led marches in Genoa and other port cities seeking to block weapons exports to Israel. This is Genoa resident Dario Rossi.
Genoa is a port and therefore the ideal place to try and stop this trade in arms that are fueling genocide. These weapons should not be allowed to pass because our laws prohibit trading arms with countries that are at war and violate human rights, yet they pass through unhindered. Fortunately, we have a very combative group of dock workers here who are fighting tooth and nail and dragging the entire citizenry into this protest, which is spreading nationally and internationally.
The U.S. Supreme Court is allowing President Trump to fire the Federal Trade Commission's last remaining Democrat, Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, and is set to hear oral arguments in December on whether federal law grants presidents the power to fire officials of independent agencies. In her dissent, Justice Elena Kagan wrote, quote, President Trump may now remove, so says the majority, though Congress said differently, any member he wishes for any reason or no reason at all. And he may thereby extinguish the agency's bipartisanship and independence, Kagan wrote. ABC's announced Jimmy Kimmel's show will return to the airwaves tonight, after it was indefinitely suspended following FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr's threats to revoke the broadcast licenses of affiliates over comments Kimmel made about Charlie Kirk's assassin. In a statement, the Walt Disney Company, which owns ABC, said, quote, last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It's a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We've spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday, unquote. This statement comes as a movement to boycott Disney Plus, Hulu, and other Disney-owned subscription services was gathering steam in the wake of Kimmel's suspension. Meanwhile, Sinclair Broadcast Group, which owns dozens of ABC affiliates, said it will not air Jimmy Kimmel Live on its stations and will replace it with news programming. On Monday, unions led a rally for free speech outside Jimmy Kimmel's studio in Hollywood. Joining the protest was California Democratic Congressmember Laura Friedman.
Is the Trump administration deciding what you can watch on television, what jokes he thinks you should be able to hear? He does not want dissent, and he's not above using the highest powers of the law to clamp down on dissent. That's un-American, it's dangerous, and it's something that we need to raise the alarm about.
President Trump's proposing sweeping changes to how children are vaccinated, saying the MMR vaccine should be broken up into separate shots. At a White House press conference flanked by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid head Dr. Mehmet Oz, Trump said children should instead receive separate shots for measles, mumps, and rubella, though he apparently forgot the name rubella. Trump also recommended removing aluminum from vaccines and said parents should wait until their children are 12 to vaccinate against hepatitis B, falsely stating the viral infection is only sexually transmitted, even though it can also be spread through open wounds, contaminated objects during birth or through breastfeeding. Trump said his recommendations were, quote, based on what I feel, unquote. He made the remarks while promoting unproven claims that vaccines and the common painkiller, acetaminophen, cause autism, despite decades of research showing no proven links.
Effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good.
The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists called the announcement irresponsible, adding, quote, it's highly unsettling that our federal health agencies are willing to make an announcement that'll affect the health and well-being of millions of people without the backing of reliable data, unquote. In immigration news, hundreds of people who were once detained at the troubled immigration jail in the Florida Everglades, dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, have disappeared. The Miami Herald reports about two-thirds of the 1,800 immigrants who were held there in July have gone missing from ICE's online database, with their families unable to locate them. Earlier this month, a federal appeals court ruled the jail could continue to operate despite reports of abuse. The Trump administration is trying to limit the enforcement of the Fair Housing Act. That's according to the New York Times review of dozens of emails, memos, and other internal communications, as well as interviews with current and former workers at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Speaking to the Times, lawyers say they've been blocked from communicating with clients without approval from a Trump appointee. Staff members also detail how their fair housing work is being dismissed as an offshoot of DEI. In response, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren said her office is reviewing documents shared by whistleblowers inside HUD.
Documents detail how the Trump administration apparently views the office that enforces civil rights protections in housing as a, quote, optics problem. Imagine thinking that defending black families from being denied a mortgage because they're black, or protecting a mom and her kids from living with an abusive father is a, quote, optics problem. Imagine thinking that it's an optics problem to help the dad with a bad knee whose landlord refuses to install a handrail on the stairs.
Prominent Egyptian blogger Alaa Abdel Fattah has been released from prison along with several other prisoners following the announcement of presidential pardons Monday in Egypt. Alaa spent most of the last 12 years in and out of prison due to his political activism. Alaa Abdel Fattah reunited with his mother, Layla Swaif, who'd been on a hunger strike for months demanding her son's freedom. Also celebrating Alaa's release Monday at their home in Cairo was his sister, Sana Saif.
We wish for this moment to come for all the families of political detainees. I'm praying that this is the end of tragedies in our family and that Allah is allowed to travel and to be with his son.
We'll have more on Alaa's pardon and release later in the broadcast. In related news, a human rights investigations uncovered a mass grave in Egypt's North Sinai, which researchers believe was used by the Egyptian military to bury the bodies of victims of extrajudicial killings. The Colombian government's terminated arms purchases from the United States, its largest military partner, as tensions rise with the Trump administration over accusations Colombia is failing to combat cocaine trafficking. Colombian President Gustavo Petro denounced the U.S. intervention, saying his government, quote, will not be blackmailed, and that more cocaine has been seized under his administration than any previous president's. In more news from Colombia, 12 former soldiers have been sentenced to 8 years of reparations work over their role in the extrajudicial executions of 135 civilians during Colombia's U.S.-backed conflict. The killings were part of what became known as the false positive scandal, when U.S.-backed Colombian soldiers massacred thousands of civilians, falsely counting them as rebel fighters. The White House said Monday it had dismissed an offer by Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro to engage in direct talks with President Trump aimed at de-escalating a U.S. naval buildup near Venezuela's coast. The brush-off came after Trump declared he'd ordered the bombing of another vessel he alleged was trafficking drugs to the United States. Trump shared video on his social media site Truth Social of an apparent airstrike on a speedboat, writing in all caps, quote, "Stop selling fentanyl, narcotics, and illegal drugs in America and committing violence and terrorism against Americans," unquote. Trump did not specify where the bombing occurred, the name of the alleged terrorist organization involved, or who conducted the attack. The strikes appear to have occurred outside any declared war zone, targeting civilians who pose no immediate threat. Legal experts say such extrajudicial killings violate both U.S. and international law and constitute war crimes. And the International Criminal Courts charged former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte with 3 counts of crimes against humanity. Duterte is accused of orchestrating the extrajudicial killings of dozens of people between 2013 and 2018 as part of his devastating so-called war on drugs. The UN estimates over 8,600 people were killed during Duterte's rule, with some estimates suggesting the true toll could be 3 times higher. Last year, Duterte admitted under oath he oversaw a death squad of gangsters while he served as mayor of the southern city of Davao. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York. Juan Gonzalez is in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.